Hello and welcome back to another episode of our Fylde Road Coaching Podcast. I'm here today joined with my co-host Lewis Eaton, and today is going to be not just talking about like a podcast, it's going to be another film review. This week we watched the Sir Bobby Robson More Than a Manager documentary / film on Amazon Prime, and as a Newcastle fan I think I've watched it about 5 or 10 times, and this is Lewis's first time of watching the documentary, and it was obviously a really good watch, definitely from a perspective of a coach. And today we're going to be discussing the documentary. We're going to be talking about how it links with our own coaching philosophies and how we're going to be using something Sir Bobby did within our coaching development going forward. So first kind of like introduction to this podcast is I want to ask Lewis for his own thoughts of the film.
Yeah, to be honest, mate, it's like insightful. I think it teaches about a lot of things you wouldn't expect. It's like obviously when we're gonna go talk about man management and stuff like that. I think what was different for me is that like people were saying like Guardiola and stuff, like it was before his time kind of thing. Like he was so advanced, he was like so enthusiastic, and like me and you were talking about. I remember me and you talk about it when we were watching it. Like back then it wouldn't be really like a lot of analysis based or anything like that, but he was like a real tactician in like that way. I just thought it was a really interesting watch how like he kind of like made his way from starting off at Ipswich all the way to Barcelona. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and he won the European Cup at Ipswich at the time, and you don't really like you kind of looking at like the history stats, you kind of see like, oh yeah, he won the European Cup with Ipswich as part of his his honours in his career, but you watch the documentary and you see how bad of a position Ipswich was before he took over, and he kind of realised that kind of like the job he did there was incredible, to say the least. And just a link before when you talked about like Pep Guardiola being like ahead of his time, you can kind of have like through watching these documentaries of your Brian Clough and your Sir Alex, you can kind of have this sort of like correlation between all of them are ahead of their time, and that's what gradually gives them success in their field. So yeah, so it's definitely a good watch. It's definitely something where, as coaches, it's something we took a lot from this documentary. What stood out for me is how Pep Guardiola and Mourinho are both, now they're like rivals, like nemesis. But looking at see how Sir Bobby both was such a massive influence on their coaching career and coaching development, and it kind of really supports that that opinion of using other coaches' experiences within your own coaching kind of like benefits you. And you notice that Mourinho talks about he took so much from Sir Bobby, his man management in which we're going to go over how important it is in this video. Like it took that away, and so did Pep Guardiola, because there was that game, wasn't there? Like when when Barca needed to win. And Pep Guardiola said the way they'll 3-1 down at half time, and they needed to score 3 more than the other team, so they effectively needed to score 5. Second half. And Pep Guardiola said the way he conducted that changing room and the way he managed each person individually is what inspired him to be a manager. And I think now looking at how successful Pep Guardiola has been, it's kind of like a mad thought to have.
It is crazy. I think like every coach has had that experience of when watching someone else and thought, like that's really inspired me to want to coach myself. Watching someone else do it. And I think what I thought was really interesting is that he invited Alex Ferguson to one of his training sessions, isn't he?
Yeah.
And, like Alex Ferguson was like, I couldn't believe it. Like you don't really usually get that. And he was like, I was a young manager coming through, and he's like giving me like this opportunity to see what he does in training. And I think that's like really interesting. I think you don't get that now, like where managers are inviting each other to training sessions, like because in case they rob anything. But I feel like back then it was more of like this helping out, wasn't it? And he was like helping out people with his philosophy kind of thing, like putting like training sessions, come down and watch me and I'll take some ideas. And I think that's really interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, it shows what sort of character he was. Like I mean, everybody who knew him loved him.
Yeah,
And he's like, it was like, it's like people described him as almost a child, within his training, how enthusiastic he was all the time, and having that sort of characteristic, it kind of like, it reflects on the team as well. They have the same, and it's just like it's just a chain of of effect throughout the
yeah.
entire club.
I think that's something which I took a massive thing from it, where like how enthusiastic it was, and like, people were saying like he was in like his 60s and he was still enthusiastic. So I think that's comes a sense it's important within our sessions that we can try and be that
Yeah,
enthusiastic, because if we're just like walking around like mundane and boring, then people aren't going to want to train or people aren't want to come. It's like having that energy in the team. I think, especially at this level, I think is makes it a lot more like fun.
yeah, especially like when it is difficult because this is something obviously we need to develop. I was going to ask you what you take away from it, and you brought up a good point. It's just like as we are students ourselves, we got our own, personal stuff to deal with. It's quite hard to keep that level enthusiastic because if we are like the top of the pyramid between the whole of the training like training and the matches, if we don't reflect some sort of positive energy, it will have a negative effect on the team. So it's definitely something we need. Like me personally, I need to develop. Always have that 110% enthusiastic personality. Yeah, that's what I took away from the film anyway, because you see what sort of like positive effect it can have.
Yeah, you see like what type of character he is really, and it's like he's very like loving, wasn't he? I thought, and I think it brought me back to when like when we watched that Ferguson documentary about his man management and like how Bobby Robson knew how to treat certain players and stuff.
I think the difference I feel like between Sir Alex Ferguson and Sir Bobby is that Sir Alex Ferguson used fear a lot within his
Yeah,
players.
Bobby Robson
I,
love. Yeah,
yeah, I think it's a difference, and you can kind of feel like that's was kind of the problem with him towards the end of his career when you know when money became an issue and people were playing for money and not for the club. It kind of had this like Sir Bobby couldn't really understand it,
mm.
and that was that's just like a different a different topic, but still.
I think the bit that like was with me, what I thought was like crazy, is how the fact of like he won so much at Barcelona in that year, and then they sacked him to bring Van
It's
Halen, and then
so the
but like
because
because
of the
he didn't
style of
understand.
football.
I'd say he's one of these proper nice football man who the fact of like he got told to be the director, and I think that's just crazy, isn't it? Like to be like, okay, like, that wouldn't have never happen nowadays. That.
Yeah, and he never wanted to be it as well. Like Louis van Gaal was in that game I just mentioned. Louis van Gaal was in the stadium of that
Mm.
game. He was already signed to be the next head coach. Imagine being that manager on the field. Imagine knowing that like you're being replaced. You've done an amazing job and you're being replaced.
Yeah, I think that's what's crazy. I think that's probably we obviously now in modern day, there's a lot of managers get sacked like quickly and stuff like that. Like we mentioned about the Brian Clough thing, where he got sacked for like what, he was only there for like a couple of days. But I think that's like more brutal how to come back from being sacked from the probably the biggest job in the world at the time for
A
not
treble winning
really
season as well.
not being unsuccessful though, like being successful.
But
And
like
I go on.
it kind of got like because he won the treble, but the fans hated his philosophy of football, and
Mm,
that's the reason why he got sacked. And you're thinking like it's just crazy. He took on the job after Johan Cruyff, and Johan Cruyff is like a god in Barcelona.
yeah.
Like I don't know I don't know what sort of record he had prior to Sir Bobby, but I can't imagine it was a good one because he got sacked.
But I think what's crazy, we look now and we said about like he didn't like his style of football, and then you take it to the likes of Mourinho now at Tottenham,
Yeah,
and I think it does translate in the sense of he'll win you games and he might win you the odd trophy, but people don't like the style of his football.
yeah,
Um,
and that could get someone sacked. Even if he brings success, if the style of football doesn't resemble between the fans, it's not. Can get you sacked. And as a coach, you kind of think, oh, what if someone goes to you, if someone asks you a question right now, what gets you sacked as a football manager? Like, what would your response be?
well, what's crazy is I think you could lose 5 games now as a football manager and your job's in contention, but personally, I think it should be if you've underachieved. If you're you've underachieved in everything. Though, say if you finish second in the league, you shouldn't be getting sacked or like just outside of top
What, so
four.
like if you goals, what have you know, like the club like board set you the goal of winning the title and it came second.
Yeah, I think that's a bit harsh to sack. If you finish fifth or fourth, then you're thinking
I think
you're a bit
most,
way off there, aren't you?
I
But
think most clubs nowadays are like top four in it anyway.
yeah, as soon as you get top four, I think your job's kind of safe, isn't it? Or win a trophy. But it's like you said, no manager's secure anymore. You win a trophy, you lose 5 games in the league, and you could be getting sacked.
Yeah,
Um, I just think that's
and
just
this is
mental.
one of the biggest issue, like especially up and coming football managers have. They don't have the time anymore. They don't have the time like Sir Alex Ferguson had. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well,
They don't
like
have,
Sir Bobby was in the England job quite a while, wasn't he?
yeah, but it was from 1982 to 1992. So he had two major well, I don't know how he did in the Euros, but the two World Cups. The World Cup where Maradona used his hand and he cheated
Yeah.
and he scored the best goal ever, which is arguably like if he didn't cheat, he'd
Yeah. No
not
idea.
scored that goal. But that was one. So I don't. And then prior to the 1990 World Cup, the one where, in my opinion, if we won on penalties, would have won the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Probably would have.
He said he was going to leave the job. Literally, like he said, he had his own. He wanted to work abroad, didn't he? So like the media saw this as like he's betraying the team. And back then, I think the media still now's bad, but back then the media was horrendous and
Yeah. I think it
psychologically
wasn't.
damaging.
It wasn't. I think especially sport coaching back then. I think with the media, it was a challenge because they could print anything they wanted.
Yeah,
And like I remember, like you remember the Beckham thing when they were like sending like death threats and it said like on the front of the papers and stuff, and they were like basically abusing him with death. And it's thinking, imagine that happening now,
yeah,
like it'd be mental. But I think I want to bring up about like Sir Bobby's man management. What I thought was like dead interesting point. I don't know if this could relate to like a in the sporting context of maybe a coach coaching a child who well, I did this in one of my flip grids about a child who doesn't have like a parental figure. I think that kind of like Sir Bobby in that sense was that like that for Paul Gascoigne.
and
Um,
also Ronaldo as well.
yeah, in the sense of that he was they didn't have anyone really to put their arm around them and say like, it's going to be all right. Like and like Wade Lineker was going on about Robson and Gascoigne's relationship, saying like there'd be a few tellings off, but like he treated him like he was like his own son kind of thing. And I think that's just so interesting. And I wonder what you think about, especially in youth coaching like under 13s, maybe 16s, of that child doesn't have that parental figure. Is it your job to, step in as like not like a surrogate parent, but like as a like like the arm around the shoulder kind of
Yeah,
thing?
because at the end of the day, especially for like youth, coaches are role models, just like how a parent would be a role model. So you have got that responsibility to uh, address some certain of the child's needs. You need to be motivating, but you also need to be disciplined, and it's just something you need to find that balance between, just like as a parent would. And I feel like it can be more difficult between players who don't have that parental figure because they don't have that role model already in place. They don't have that sort of them certain characteristics already, on the way to being developed. So, like for Paul Gascoigne, for example, like he was like for me personally, I reckon the media what broke him. But Sir Bobby said that in the documentary, it was the media that broke him. But he still didn't have them. If it wasn't for Sir Bobby, who knows what Gascoigne was, because he was that parental, that parent figure in place who kind of safeguarded him when he needed to be helped. Even when he retired, he was always there for him. And I don't feel like you get that now in modern day football.
No, you don't. I don't think. I think especially in youth football, there's not a lot done, is there, for players who leave clubs or don't make it and stuff like that.
No,
I
I
think
I, I can't say this in one of my flip grids. Flip grids is like a like a assignment we do with our university course, like a short video where we discuss some sort of like coaching topic. And I said in one of mine thought the education, because I played for a football academy, and I noticed that the education you get given is not really credible in the outside world. So like if you're especially most of like a small minority, but there's some kids who don't have like the parental support.
Mm.
In my opinion, about the education you get with being in a football academy, like a scholarship program, for example, isn't really supportive in the outside world, and it kind of causes problems. And I think, in my opinion, professional football clubs should start focusing on developing these educational programs.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. I think it might be a bit off topic this, but I do think that like especially in now, like you got the example of that lad from Man City who like unfortunately committed suicide and stuff. So like you got examples like that where you think these lads are coming into football as at an early age and they're not really having that like guidance, and then as soon as they're done with them, like yeah, see you later, you're done with you now, and that's it, they're gone, and they don't have any
They
like
didn't
you
have
said
that.
there, like education programs to help them.
So that's a prime example of a felt that nobody managed him. Nobody, nobody understood because within for Man City, for example, it's almost a business. They kind of exploiting these children's needs. They're like transferring them. All they care about is to supply players to the first team, and it's only the 1%. So what happens to the 99%? What happens to their psychological damage of training, 5 times a week, playing 2 games a week sometimes, and having no award from it. Like when
Yeah,
they,
that's
that's
it.
it matters.
I think it definitely does. I think, like you said, education programs are like the way to go forward with stuff like that. In a way, to be like with my management to do with our coaching, I personally think it's difficult, especially because we know the people who we coach. But then again, I think it's the case of arm around the shoulder type of thing, like oh well done mate, and just kind of like what not like what Bobby Robson was to Gascoigne, but kind of like the enthusiasm that Bobby Robson shown
Yeah,
to
definitely.
be like that character. And if
Self
someone,
belonging within the team.
yeah, if someone makes a mistake, and trying to understand, what's going to get the best out of them. Like, is it
Yeah.
going to you're going to have to get a rise out of them, or you're going to have to be like, all right, it's all right, come on, you
Or,
can
or
just go.
even make a joke about it.
Yeah,
Make
exactly.
about it.
I think humor is a really good thing to
If
it's a
yeah,
really good like thing to have.
definitely a good mechanism to in place to make these players feel a bit more comfortable in that
Yeah,
environment.
I think it is. Especially, obviously, we know the lads, so we know the banter and stuff like that. I think in youth sport in general, I think it should be taken as fun. If someone makes a mistake, then you can make a laugh and joke at it after, after the game and stuff. Just be like, oh, why did you do that? Like, what are you thinking? But I think that's what it needs to be about, doesn't it? Like, you can create that humour. I
Yeah.
think humour is, funny enough, humour is quite big in man management, especially at grassroots level, I think.
It's definitely highlights like the importance of like my management within coaching at any level. Like I found some research before where it said my management is linked to sustained motivation, and especially in a time like this with COVID, you might lose motivation and playing football, feeling like self belonging. That sustained motivation is not only going to reflect on the pitch and off the pitch, and as we are a team full of students, is kind of beneficial towards their education as well.
I agree. I think yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think when when in our coaching, obviously we're not going to be like the Robsons or the Alex Fergusons or the Brian Cloughs and that, are we? And if we was, it'd be a bit of an bit of a joke. But like I think it's like you said, like that type of enthusiasm that we need to just portray. I think when in our coaching.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's so for me, Sir Bobby was a role model for me anyway. So it's always someone I looked up to within my coaching. Like, I just want to ask you just like a random question. Is like, is there any other coaches who you've took their experiences or their values into within your own coaching? Because like in this documentary, you saw Mourinho, Pep, Sir Alex Ferguson taking stuff from Sir Bobby. Is there anything you took from any other coaches, like even like James, like like somebody off our course?
Yeah, do you know what? I would probably say I had a coach. Funny enough, a negative and a positive. I'll throw here. I had a coach in school, a PE teacher, who I thought was like not. It was used to. I think he used to play for Swansea like that year, obviously years ago. But he was he was like disciplined, but like he knew how to get the best out of people. And I just thought that's just such like he had such good traits. Like he like if people were late, like he'd be, be like, "What you doing? Why you late?" And he'd be very strict on that. That's one thing he's strict on, like lateness. Make sure you're early. And then I'd set like, but he was like a positive in a way of, if he knew a player had a bad game, it'd be straight over to him. Like being like, "Oh, you've had a good game, don't worry about it," and all that. And then like when I was coaching at that school, and he was like there, obviously had to be there because I was like like a teacher because I can't do it on my own. He would be like, "Oh, you've got to make sure that you're motivating them." He just give me like little tips and advice, and I thought that's like really good in the sense of it helped me as a coach develop.
So it's like a mentor to you. So like
Oh
he,
yeah, it was like he paid for like my like level one,
really,
coach badge. Yeah, so like I think to myself, if someone's gonna pay for your coaching badge, they're gonna they must believe in you, and I think that's why I took away from that. It's like really give me a lot of satisfaction, to be honest. But then a negative towards that, I had a coach at like 10 to about 13, and honestly, he was the worst coach I've probably ever had in my life. I've and his man management skills have to be honestly were the worst, and I've never seen a coach like him ever. Like like experience like coaching or you've seen
yeah,
other coaches. On he was so bad. I remember a game once. We played the best team in the league, and I was playing well leading up to that, and he put me centre midfield, and I'm not a centre midfielder, am I?
no,
And he brought me off after 20 minutes, and I was like, I thought I did all right, considering. But we conceded, but it wasn't. It was a corner or something. We conceded. But I give the ball away, leading up to the corner,
yeah,
and then I come off, and he turned around and said, "That's your fault, that goal." And I
really,
thought, wow, like how to absolutely just. And looking back at it now as like 20, 21-year-old, like I'm thinking, what an absolute way to destroy like a young lad playing football that is. To be like, what you doing? And I can remember like people would miss chances and he would be effing on the sideline, like screaming. And you think, wow, like you were actually allowed to coach an under 10s to an under 14s team with the way like your management skills were. And I just thought that's like horrific. And I think that shows on grassroots level, there's a lot of managers who are trying to be this like dictator in a sense of they're not man managing players. They're trying to I think they try and focus on the old like the old minds like Ferguson and be like, oh yeah, the hairdryer and all that. But you're thinking it's under 10s. You don't need to be
yeah.
screaming at
So that
people for misplaced passes.
they're trying to like play this role of this, this big time coach,
Mm.
and it's just, it's just not working. It's just not what you need at that level. Like the aims of the children's needs should be the priority, especially at grassroots football.
That's what I think. That's what I mean. That man management is such an important thing in football, and if it's done wrong, and if it's done wrong, really wrong, it can affect. I think players who are playing like it can. I think personally, when I was about 14, 13, confidence in football for me was low because of that. Because like, it was constant, like every time you get the ball, pass the ball, pass the ball, pass the ball, and it's like he'd be screaming on the sideline, and you're thinking, like you're scared to even like, like do anything, like go forward or lose the ball in case like you're getting to get shouted at, and that I think can like really bring the love out of football for like players, and
Yeah,
I think that's where in a sense there's a lot of academy players where I know you got to be a bit more serious, but the fun at an early age gets taken out of football because of
definitely.
how serious it is.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Talk about like was it early specialization where they are recruiting players from a young age of 6 into like pre-academies, and you're thinking like straight away that aim that these professional football clubs, their aim of their training sessions aren't going to be really orientated around fun and enjoyment. They're going to be more goal setting, and it's
Mm.
just that's at like an early stage to start this sort of like embed this philosophy in children, because there is research surrounding it. There is research saying this leads to dropping out of sport in general.
Yeah, no one should hate. You know what I mean? Every time you play football, you should enjoy playing football.
Yeah,
I think the most I've enjoyed football is playing at uni because it's
yeah,
with your mates. No one cares. You're just having a laugh. It's 11 aside. It's competitive, but you think you're just having a laugh at the end of the day, and win or lose, you go away to the pub. Well, used to go away to the pub, have a bevy, and then
Yeah,
enjoy yourself and have a laugh about the game. And I think that's what I think young players have a lot of pressure on them, and especially managers need to be able to use them like man management skills to bring players on side if they they're falling out of love with the game.
yeah. I feel like before when you talked about like an experience which made you believe that there's like man management, how to like an incorrect way of delivering my management is through that person. Like I got one where I think we just lost. It was when I played at an academy. I was 18. We lost a game 1-0. I missed a 1-on-1 in the 85th minute. Like it was, and it was like a half chance. It probably
Yeah,
was. It probably wasn't. But at the moment, personal opinion, it was a half. It's probably an open net looking back at it. But I remember I got into the changing room and everybody was quiet. Nobody had a good game. I think I came off the bench for last like 30 minutes. And I literally just sat there for about 15 minutes and he was just there in my face, just shouting, like, you should have done this, you should have done this, like swear words. And I was like 18 and I was just looking at him and I was just thinking, wow, like what a way to build my confidence.
yeah.
And afterwards, I rang my dad and I was like, Dad, I'm leaving. And I joined another club, like literally, like within 5 hours.
Yeah, it's not right, is it? Like at that level, like it's just some screaming in your face. There's ways of going about doing it.
It feels like
But
they're uneducated, though, in my opinion.
oh yeah, definitely. I think there's a way of screaming at someone or shouting at someone in a one-on-one kind of thing, in a room, just you and them, and be like, whatever happens in the room, nothing leaves here. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah. Not in
we
front of
leave
the
it at the
team.
door, kind of thing. But doing it in a team setting at professional level, I understand. Like, but it it can like completely destroy your confidence and your belief. I
Yeah.
think
And
in
at the
yourself.
same, I remember because it was like, he didn't understand my own personal like values as well. With like looking back at it now, I haven't really thought about it in this sort of like perspective. But like, everybody else in that team were like mates at school. I was the only person who wasn't like actually with them. Like they were
Yeah,
all in a different county. They literally all of them were best mates, and I was coming in, and then I was just getting. I felt like an scapegoat as well for the manager, because you talk about
yeah,
like Mourinho and he was like saying like Sissoko was a big influence in the changing room. I wasn't like that, so I felt like I was a target.
yeah. I
That's
think that's something which is massive, especially in grassroots level with parents who have their kids playing football. I think it's easy to shout at the kid on the side whose mum or dad doesn't come at the game
yeah,
because he's on his own. But they wouldn't shout at the guy if the kid on the side if the mum or dad was at the game. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what,
yeah,
in a sense
exactly.
of like you said there, I think there is a lot of scapegoating in football, and especially I think there's people like that coach there, in my opinion, is just looking at the now, isn't he? Like looking at, oh well, I'm going to scream at him now. It's going to be beneficial for all them, and all the other rest of the team are going to feel like, you know what I mean, that
Yeah,
they've done all right. But like for you personally, that could affect you like in the future.
exactly. Exactly. I feel as well looking at grassroots football from my past experiences. It was always the manager's son who always get the wrath.
Oh yeah,
Because the manager could, he was his son.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, someone you could shout at. Yeah,
And the
yeah,
manager's not thinking of really about like the psychological development of this child, being in like shouted out in front of his peers, that at all. And it's definitely down to your man management.
yeah. I would agree.
But yeah, so we got a bit of a tangent away from the film, but it's still all relevant in its own, all in its own ways.
Yeah, it's surrounding man management, isn't it? And I think we've linked in a lot to do with Robson there, and a lot to do with our coaching and grassroots level, and
It kind of,
different
but
areas can affect.
we have the same like opinion where having the changing room all as a unit is so like beneficial to success, and that's
Mm,
what our goal is at Fylde Road Football Club is to achieve. And you look towards the end of Sir Bobby's career when money started to be such a massive influence because people were just playing for the money, they weren't playing for the club. And as a big football fan, a big Newcastle fan, Sir Bobby was, it was just like detrimental to his to the end of his career.
yeah, I think it's like you said there, like You like Robson he loved that club, but there's players there who weren't there just for the love of the club. They were there just for the money and the easy ride, weren't they? And I think that's a problem with football today as well.
Yeah, that's it. Like you can talk about like we also talk about the Lindy effect in our flip grid. You can talk like in the past it wasn't there about money, but it is now. Like
Yeah, it'll always be
when
there now.
it'll always
Don't
be
get loyal
there now.
players anymore.
No,
I
no.
don't think.
No,
Uh,
that's a shame. It's such a shame because like football was at its best. Like I think it's like it's kind of like described as the I forgot what someone as like the ego era or the reputation era of football is when Roy
yeah,
Keane and Vieira played. They played for the passion of the football club. You don't get that anymore because everybody has a price. And
yeah,
money is infinite, especially for some young players. And it's such an in my opinion, it's just like
yeah. It is sad to be fair. It's harder for managers, isn't it, to keep their own players and stuff like that. Because how
how
can you
they
manage someone when
yeah
you're giving him your best and someone comes in with 100 million transfer fee and
like
300k wage for the
yeah
player? Like,
exactly.
well,
And
that's it.
also like
Gone.
also like he's like you managing this guy, you want him to perform his best for the club. You know you can get more out of him, but the only reason why he's turning up to training is for the 300k wage bill, every week.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. But it's never going to change now. I don't really know how to battle that. It's just going to be that forever now, and hopefully he might get some like maybe Scott McTominay from Man United. He might be
Yeah, you get like the odd one, won't you? But
yeah
that's about it, I think.
about it. But that's a bit of a downer to end this episode on. If we both recommend Sir Bobby. It's such a good
Yeah,
documentary.
it
Produced
definitely is.
well, did well. It's on Amazon Prime. Um, but that'll be that for us today. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this another episode of the Fylde Road Coaching Podcast. Please like and subscribe and continue to follow us on our coaching journey. And yeah, anything, Lewis?
No,
Goodbye.
that's it. I thought it was a very interesting discussion, mate. It's good.
Good. All right. Okay. See you guys next time.
See you later. Bye.